Hi, ladies and gentlemen. So it's Peter here, the CEO and founder of Beyond Form, a fashion tech venture studio. So on today's episode, I'm joined by my co-host Von.
Hi.
And we're going to be recapping what's been happening from a tech perspective throughout the Fashion Week months. So New York, London, Milan and Paris. So just to start off today's session, recapping what we have been seeing. So in New York, we saw Afterpay's collaboration with various fashion designers to create NFTs, which then allowed the NFT holder to have access to various Fashion Week activities. We saw Tommy Hilfiger launching his Tommy Factory campaign, which included NFTs, a live stream with Roblox, and of course the actual fashion show itself. We saw Carolina Herrera, a dress that was created in Roblox and was then resold for $5,000. So I'm quite keen to know and understand who's
buying this.
Exactly, who's buying a dress for $5,000. Nothing actually happened in Milan, but then we go to London. We had the Institute of Digital Fashion creating a campaign, an IRL and a URL campaign that was bringing awareness to sustainability issues, and that was then unlocked by a myriad of NFTs and tokens and QR codes. And then finally, Paris, where we are based at the moment. The moment on everybody's lips was the Coperni spray dress that was sprayed onto Bella Haddid and then turned into a dress which she pranced around in. And it was the moment that everybody has been talking about, at least for the last week.
Most definitely.
So we're going to be breaking down some of those events that have happened over Fashion Week, giving you our thoughts, giving you some, I guess, nuggets of what we're seeing as well in terms of the venture studio, maybe some of the gaps are. And ultimately, do we think these technology moments in the fashion weeks are here to stay? What does it mean for the industry moving forward? And are we going to be seeing more essentially going into next year? So Von, shall we start with New York then?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, so just to recap, we had Afterpay. So for those of you that don't know, Afterpay is a buy now, pay later platform. And essentially they collaborated with 5 fashion designers. So Joseph Altazara, An Only Child, Jonathan Simkai, Kim Shu and the Blondes. And each of these fashion brands essentially created an NFT which looks like a key. And the holders of these keys, once you of course purchase the NFT, were able to have access to various Fashion Week events, including seats to the actual fashion shows themselves. So we haven't really seen this before. Are we going to see more NFT-led invitations / keys to Fashion Week events? What do you think, Bon?
I think the short answer is yes, really, because fashion is really about exclusivity and kind of that aspiration feature or element to it. So this is kind of like playing on that nuance. But funny enough, it is a little bit more, well, specifically with Afterpay and these NFTs, it's a little bit more accessible from what we've kind of seen in terms of price points as well. So it is kind of giving some sort of accessibility, but at the same time, you're still getting that exclusivity in terms of you need that key to access certain things. So I definitely think that we'll probably get more of that. Not necessarily maybe keys in this sense, but probably more in other aspects that we can access with, I don't know. It doesn't have to be like a key, basically, I think, in future. And maybe just some more interactivity with that as well. Because I think NFTs at the moment are super just kind of straightforward in the sense of having your digital twin in this sense. And then just being able to buy the actual garment from that. So I just think it's super like, okay, great, it makes sense. But I think we can definitely move forward from that as well. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think regardless of the experience that it did in Lock, they actually partnered with 3D visual artists, and the keys themselves do actually look quite cool. So, for example, Kim Shu's key was linked to her cultural background, which was quite a nice nod. the Altazara one was quite minimalistic. So I think that pieces of art themselves
Yeah.
were art in their own right, and I could see why somebody wanted to basically own a piece of artwork. Of course, we have startups in our portfolio that are dealing with NFTs and digital fashion and so forth. And I think this is a really great example of fashion brands experimenting and trying to still find where does it sit in fashion contextually and from a use case perspective. And I don't necessarily think we're quite there yet. I think was what you're saying, Ron, with the we can still keep exploring and we can move on from these quite obvious experiences.
Exactly.
Having said that, though, I think it is a cool way for, I guess, the people that aren't in the industry to have a, I guess, access all areas
Yeah,
type
exactly.
of ticket into the fashion week. And I think it's we're slowly seeing those worlds merge between, a non-industry professional or a consumer outside of the industry going into a fashion week event, but then I was also interested in digital art and NFTs and technology, and it's like this melting pot now of things happening together. Whether we'll see more NFT imitations next time round, I think we will.
I think so.
I think so. I think the more daring brands, or the more digitally inclined brands will go for this type of event moving forward.
Yeah, I think so too. And what's funny though about this is that a lot of the invitations so far are still super traditional. So, and that's pretty much kind of like your card in the post, or whatever they give the influencers and so on. So in this case, I think this is just an interesting way to just kind of change that up. But considering where we are in fashion, I'm surprised that that is only just coming about, not necessarily with NFTs, but just in general.
I guess the evolution of the Fashion Week invitation.
Exactly. It's still very much, I wouldn't say behind, but it's just not, there's not much has happened in that department. So maybe that's probably one of the reasons why maybe this is happening now, in terms of there's room for doing something over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the next topic then. So Tommy Hilfiger went all out for the Tommy Factory event. So this included a live stream, so big massive screen at the entrance, which was showing in tandem the live stream into the Roblox. So Roblox community, around 50 million daily active users at the moment, so a huge community. It's most likely not the fashion or the core fashion consumer, so I think that's quite interesting as well. But essentially they were doing a virtual catwalk in the metaverse with replicas of the actual Tommy physical products. They also then had NFTs which could be downloaded at the event, so the attendees could scan the NFT on the wall, or the QR code to get the NFT, shall we say, instantly. These were stuck on walls. Whether it's effective as what, I've seen a few people saying, well, it was quite kind of discreet.
Okay.
So it wasn't obvious what it was doing.
That's quite interesting.
And then other things were things like digital wallets created through the NFT, digital balloons that they could customize, and various exclusive digital items at the event as well. So it was literally like a fairground of digital elements put into one place. I guess from the outside, it looks polished.
Yeah,
is the word that I would use, and I wouldn't expect anything less from the production team. So Halation, for those of you that didn't know, Halation is a UK based agency that does deliver digital experiences and campaigns for luxury brands. And knowing how Halation works, I can see why it looks super polished. But do we think it was a successful campaign?
Well, considering the amount of daily users already, I can imagine even if it's just half of them who showed up for that, I think that's already shows that there is potential. Not knowing, obviously, the actual metrics and things like that, we can only guess that potentially this had some sort of positive impact in terms of anyway press, for example, and just showing the possibility of creating this kind of well, as you said, like this fair filled with all these activities and everything. But considering that maybe the QR codes were maybe hidden and things like that, it's a little bit confusing then what then the purpose may have been. Is it again that case of exclusivity? If you find it, you're part of the club kind of thing. Obviously that's for that aspect, but when it comes to the actual metaverse element of it, and having the NFTs, I would say if success means it's a case of them innovating, trying something new, or just innovating in general and getting themselves out there as one of the leaders for this, I would say then yeah. But there's definitely room for improvement. I think in terms of maybe just making it a bit more hyper-real. I just wonder why it's not there yet. I'm sure the team is more than capable of actually producing that. We've got startups that are capable of producing that kind of quality as well. So in this case, it's not necessarily a question of quality. It's a question of intention with the outcome. If it's still looking like a video game, just from the graphics and even just the features of like the digital balloon, for example, very playful. But now I'm kind of wondering then what really is the full intentions behind those little details as well.
How it seemed to me was like, here's the fashion show and then here's all the paraphernalia around the fashion show, versus these things are integral to the show itself. And I think if those digital elements were stripped away, you'd still have the Tommy Hilfiger show and it still would have gone on as normal. Yeah, basically. Exactly. So I think what I would like to see, if Tommy Hilfiger, they're really good at this because they are very forward when it comes to digital campaigns. Obviously, they brought about the whole see now, buy now model. And actually, this fashion show is their fall or autumn fashion show during the spring-summer schedule. Actually,
that's true. I didn't notice that.
You didn't notice that?
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. So I think they are very forward in pushing conversations around things like that. But I would love to see them really integrate, as you're saying, that whole integration element. How, if they were to do it again, okay, it's not just an NFT or a live stream of the Roblox on the side, but it's also part of the show. And this is integral to the digital strategy of Tommy Hilfiger, and that's why they have actually then put it into this specific campaign.
Oh yeah.
And I think that is true actually for most fashion brands that we're seeing. The NFT digital campaigns are an add-on to the main event versus it being the main event.
That's actually exactly what I wrote in my notes as well, just thinking that when you have even just the calendar, that Fashion Week calendar, you're never really seeing that reflecting on the metaverse or the NFT aspect of things being the main thing. It's just, we have a show, it's a runway, whether it's live stream, whether it's digital, whether it's invite only, as they always say. None of the actual fashion tech elements really come through. Even when you say digital, sometimes it doesn't really mean it's a show in the metaverse or anything. It could just mean they recorded it, digitized it, and it's online. So that's kind of like, I agree basically with the idea that brands are also just kind of using them, or at least fashion tech, as kind of like little elements on the sides to maybe complement the main things, which again, kind of following the question you asked before, I think in the future that may change as they start to discover how helpful fashion tech can actually be and can really just revolutionize what's currently happening as well.
Absolutely. So then let's move on to then the Carolina Herrera dress. So a physical dress was shown to close the show, modelled by the supermodel Carly Kloss. She looked fabulous in my opinion. And then a digital version of the same dress was then released on Roblox immediately for a duration of 4 hours. So in total, there were 432 units sold of that digital replica. Since then, the initial say, which sold for $5, actually, they have had in order to get the value of the actual digital item, there obviously has to be a resale. So somebody else buys it as well, and then you know the real value. Mm-hmm. So in this scenario, one person did rebuy the dress for $5,000, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
From $5 to 5,000.
Quite a difference.
Quite a difference. And then the average resale was 188,000 approximately Robux, so that's the currency in Roblox, which is around 1,883 actual real life money.
Yeah.
Which again is still quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
Regardless.
It's not really pocket change.
It's not pocket change.
Yeah.
What do we think about this? Like, do we think the consumption of fashion, this is the way it's heading? I don't actually know how much the physical dress is worth, but do we think the digital versions are going to just have as much weight as the actual real life version?
Well, looking at these numbers here, it does kind of seem like that, and all the other examples that we're already aware of with other brands. So I think short answer is yes, obviously depending on the target market and the type of brand and the value that's been created through those elements. But yeah, it's quite a strange thing just to think that you are purchasing just something digital and kind of what do I do with this afterwards? Mm-hmm. I completely get the value, and I know in previous episodes of the podcast I've mentioned that I'm not quite getting why people are really investing into that. Not companies, but in terms of just people who are just buying. But I think it's quite interesting, actually, in terms of the fact that this is really being valued. And that just kind of goes back to the idea that, what fashion really is in real life anyway, of just value just being created from a name, from all those types of assets, and now it's also translating into metaverse, and that is in a way, I think, great news for the brands, because all of a sudden they are also becoming more accessible globally, much easier than obviously before. So I don't know if you're finding that strange or actually quite interesting.
I think what it is proving, though, the commercial value of digital fashion, because there is obviously a question mark whether this is something that can have longevity, or are we in a NFT/digital fashion bubble?
Frenzy, yeah.
Exactly. And I think this is kind of proven that use case. Mm-hmm. I think if we see more of that repeating next season, I think digital fashion has two legs to stand on.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
We shall see. Okay, so then let's fly over the pond to London. So in London, there was the Institute of Digital Fashion times the London Fashion Week campaign. So for those of you that don't know, the IODF is an agency that builds campaigns with fashion clients, merging digital and sustainability into a conversation piece, shall we say. So they had big billboards around London. They had various touch points. On one of the big billboards, it does say, "The world is in a crisis. Do you need more clothes?" This was then accompanied by a QR code, and people could actually sign up to the waitlist to the 5-day event. And the 5-day event, which was a in real life event, then presented a variety of activities to spar on that conversation around sustainability, which included as well collectible tokens made from recycled metal, embossed with QR codes, which then amplified the message. What do we think about that?
I think it's quite interesting how they are obviously making this into like a proper billboard moment, of putting us back into the thoughts of sustainability, which obviously will, I think, forever remain a hot topic. And eventually won't even be a hot topic, it would just be something that's just normal to talk about. But I'm not sure really then kind of what comes from this. What should we kind of do with this in the end? Are we trying to revolutionize with the people who are scanning the QR codes? Are we trying to actually just say a message and hope for the best kind of thing? I'm not sure. I'm like, again, with all these things that we're talking about, it's always about kind of like the intentions behind it and how we're going to move forward from that, as opposed to just here's something there kind of thing. I don't know how you see it.
Yeah, obviously with a 5-day event, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And I think what I would like to see moving forward again is, exactly as you're saying, Vaughn, is that how do they then take this further? Is London Fashion Week actually going to do another campaign, or was this just a performative marketing trick from the London Fashion Week side?
Exactly.
I think that's a question mark there in itself. The whole sustainability angle, of course, is super, super important. But I would like to see, okay, so how is London Fashion Week or the British Fashion Council specifically integrating more sustainability agendas?
Exactly.
If we look at the London Fashion Week schedule, there's not like necessarily a section that is really highlighting sustainable fashion.
Exactly.
For example, or platforms that encourage, for example, repair, rental, or resale. We have startups in our portfolio that are working in the end of life spectrum. They find it so difficult to get brands on board with that type of activity because the returns are still not necessarily, or the concrete, not run concretely enough for them to be like, okay, I'm going to invest 10, 20, 30, 40,000
exactly
into a campaign. So I think it's about, okay, this is great because it's getting the message out there, but what do we do with that then from a business perspective?
Exactly. I was thinking actually in my head, is this kind of a type of greenwashing that we're also seeing here, in the sense that, okay, here we go, we got Fashion Week coming along, let's just kind of create this campaign and there, we've covered our backs kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then take a step back. But you never really know sometimes, to be honest.
Yeah. As a campaign in itself, though, it was well thought through.
Yeah. It's shiny in terms of that aspect.
Exactly. So then that was really the only notable thing in London. Next Fashion Week then was Milan. Absolutely zero happening in terms of tech and innovation in Milan. I think that is quite disappointing. And I think it is indicative of where Italy is, shall we say, in terms of their adoption of tech and innovation. Why do we think there was no tech at all in this Fashion Week?
I'm just wondering if they are kind of how Paris was, kind of still is, in terms of just really respecting the traditions of how they became a fashion capital in the first place, Milan specifically. So in this case, maybe that's kind of what we're seeing. And then the innovation is then being thrown onto, well, the falling models, for example, where it's just adding some sort of flavour to the catwalk compared to fashion tech that really can actually completely change the way they are traditionally doing things. So I think that's just what I think about it. Maybe there's something else that's holding them back. Like we've discussed before about how we don't often speak to that many Italian startups, for example, and that would be fashion tech startups. So is it that's just a culture there where there's not much support in terms of that department of fashion tech? Are people interested in it? Or are people not going over there to actually start something? Maybe we can look into that. So yeah, I think maybe it could be a mix of culture, it could be a mix of just mindset and trying to kind of hold on to the heritage and the traditions, pretty
Which
much.
is nothing wrong with that, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think it would be nice to see some of the brands on the Italian Fashion Week to start experimenting
Yeah, that would be
more than they
interesting.
have done,
Exactly.
basically. So let's move on to then Paris, the final fashion weeks. As I said earlier at the start, the moment that everyone has been talking about, the Coperni show with Bella Hadid and the spray-on dress. So just to recap, this is a spray-on technique developed by Fabricant, and it was developed by designer and scientist Manel Torres. And essentially what this liquid does, it contains cotton or synthetic fibers suspended in a polymer solution, and as it evaporates, once it hits the human body, it then creates a physical structure, essentially. So with this particular performance, of course, Bella stood in the middle, they sprayed it around her, they then shaped it into an off-the-shoulder dress with a split down the front. And the whole idea is that the solution can be then dissolved again and be reusable. What do we think about this performance?
I think it's quite interesting to show the possibilities of, I guess, in this case, can we say biotech or biofabric?
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting to physically see that on a catwalk as opposed to just it happening behind the scenes and then it goes onto a catwalk and then we just hear about the story of how it happened. And I, if I'm honest, I think it was quite interesting to see how seamless the dress was in the end, because you're kind of waiting and anticipating to see the cracks and, you know, how it maybe naturally just doesn't quite fully have this like kind of seamless effect. But yeah, no, in the end it looked like a legit dress. So I think that's quite interesting actually. And it's not really, I don't think bio fabrics are really something that are as shiny in a way as this has presented it to be in the industry actually. So again, not sure if this is something we might see going forward, but it's definitely a starting point and could be, it kind of just reminds me of the Graduate Fashion Week show. I believe it was someone from Central St. Martin's with the balloons, and then they just deflated and created a dress. In that case, you're looking at the performance, but you're also, in this case, looking also at how the fabric has been created from scratch. So I think that's quite something that would be great to see more of, maybe in a different type of performance this time. And maybe just kind of shout more about sustainability in a more aesthetically pleasing way.
Yeah. I think what's interesting here is the fact that the technology isn't new. It has been around for 10 years in itself, but nobody's really talked about it.
No.
So I think what it has done again is highlighted the potential of a specific innovation, and then of course something like this is not yet commercially usable. Like, we're not going to go around spraying ourselves with clothes on, but I do think it instigates ideas and will spark hopefully more brands and more designers to test the waters with, I guess, biofabrics. The Coperni co-founders Sebastian and Arnaud, they worked with Torres for 6 months in his London Bioscience Innovation Centre to develop the spray-on dress. So again, obviously that's quite a long time frame.
Yeah.
To develop something like this. I think probably not ready to wear. We won't see it, but I think it's almost like straddling the lines of couture. Actually, is this the new version of couture potentially? Now we are going to get a spray dress in a can.
Oh yeah.
Or a spray, whatever product it's going to be. I think that's interesting. But yeah, it's definitely making material science a little sexier than it is.
Yeah, definitely. But I just really do wonder then how maybe Coperni can actually continue this on maybe for the future fashion shows, or are we just kind of doing it, creating a buzz, and then going back to to normal.
Well, I think that's the question. We shall see next season.
Yeah.
So let's just round off this episode. So do we think we're going to be seeing more technology in the fashion weeks next time round?
I think yes, but maybe I would hope for more on really the front end of things. So not just an additional NFT that you can also get, or obviously vice versa, but more on the catwalk. Let's see some more fashion tech on the actual official catwalk. I would like that physically as well as obviously digitally.
No, I completely agree with that. And I think the Tommy Factory campaign, the rest of them are a little bit shyer, shall we say, in the projection of their voice with technology. And I think we need to see more of that being amplified, and where it's really going to head from a tech and fashion perspective.
Yeah.
Or are we going to be completely reverting just back to how things were previously, and we're all going to be still doing analog catwalk shows with press flying all over the world?
Which I can see that happening as well.
Yeah.
I can see that happening, but still, in terms of websites, in terms of just the retail experiences, I do still see, or at least have hope, that fashion tech is still going to be alive over there.
Yeah. I think it's still trying to find its feet. I think it's going to take at least a few more seasons before it's going to be like, okay, we are more secure now in our voice.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we shall see them next season.
Let's see.
Okay. Thanks, Vaughn.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We will be releasing episodes at least once a month, with each episode featuring a different topic. We'll also have guests joining us, such as founders from our portfolio of startups and fashion industry insiders from our incredible network, to bring further discussions on sustainability, fresh perspectives on design, and many more, all related to fashion tech. Be sure to check us out on social media at beyondform_io, as well as our website beyondform.io for updates. Beyond Form brings human and financial resources together to launch and scale early stage fashion tech startups with ambitious founders. We hope to potentially see some of you joining our venture studio very soon. Don't forget to drop us a line if you'd like to hear us talk about a specific topic. Until next time.